One of the most mind-boggling things as a composer or producer is the process of comparing our music with the music of the pros or our idols. Usually we tend to notice how our music, no matter how many libraries we have in common with the pros and everything, never sounds as loud and as huge. Maybe you want to get to something that sounds like this. To this. You notice that difference in sound and hugeness. You're like, how the hell can I get there? If that's your question, well, you're in luck because that's what I'm going to talk about in this very quick tutorial today. Hey, what's up everyone? This is Alex, and today we're going to talk about loudness, or how to get your mixes to sound as loud as the ones from the pros. Now, as I mentioned in other tutorials, there's one way in which to do that, very important, which is to have a huge and full and broad, thick frequency spectrum, which this track has. This track here is an old, like it's a year and a half old work in progress that I kind of abandoned. I composed it with a friend of mine, Aram Zero, but I wanted to take this as an example. So the first thing you need to have is, again, the broad frequency spectrum, and I made tutorials about that, which I'm going to leave down below in the description of this video if you want to check them out. But the second thing to get your track to sound huge is limiters or maximizers. That's how I got to this point, which is very loud. Sorry about that. Anyway, now let's talk about how maximizers work. I want to, before talking about maximizers, I want to introduce you to the concept of normalization, which is the first logical step. So if you have a track that sounds like this, if you check out the waveform, you see there's lots of space here. And usually the higher, the taller your waveform is, the louder it is, the more decibels of volume it has. Now, if you do normalization, you notice your track becomes way taller, and now it's like louder. But what changed? So I'm going to explain you what changed. Pretty much, when you apply normalization on a track, the algorithm that applies normalization will take the loudest part of the track, in which case it's this one, and it will increase its volume to the point it reaches 0 dB as a peak. 0 dB is the maximum peak in volume that you can reach before your song starts to clip and distort. You never want to go beyond 0 dB. Basically, 0 dB is the red. When you see in your dB meter, it hits the red, like here, it means it hits 0 dB. Now, when you normalize though, then you get your peak of the track to reach 0 dB, and all the rest of the track will be increased in terms of volume at the same ratio. That's why it beefens up like this, but it keeps the same ratio. When you apply limiters and maximizers instead, you beefen up the track by actually increasing the loudness of certain bits. So if you see here, this is the maximized version, the purple one, and the brown one is the normalized. So maximization is a way to increase the decibels of freaking everything in your track and get it to sound that big. If done too much, it can destroy the balance in your track though. So I'm gonna explain to you how maximizers work in a very basic way, because this is such a complex mastering unit that deserves an entire tutorial, like half an hour long. And I haven't even begun to, understand all of it, So I'll make other tutorials about this later on, but today I want to talk about it very quick. This maximizer I'm using right now, it's from iZotope Ozone 7, which is this mastering suite, with equalizers, compressors, limiters, maximizers, imagers, and all those things that can make your track huge and amazing. Now, the beauty of iZotope Ozone is, this is a plugin I've been using for years, and the beauty of this plugin is that it's amazing to use, even if you're not savvy about all of these things. If you don't know what thresholds and all those things mean, you can still use iZotope Ozone and use presets for each single module or for the whole iZotope Ozone session, which are going to make your song sound much better. So this is great for beginners, but also for advanced users who want to use manual parameters. And right now, it's discounted because of Black Friday until the 2nd of December, I think. If you want to get it, link down below in the description. But let's talk about the basics of maximization. Every maximizer or limiter tends to have at least two parameters, the threshold and the ceiling, and sometimes also the character. Here we have IRC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. This don't matter for now. I'm going to talk about them in other tutorials, but we're going to talk about the basics. So threshold and ceiling. If you notice right now, I'm gonna try to use the maximizer and notice what happens when I reduce the threshold. When I go down, it becomes way louder. But if I go too low, it starts to distort in some cases, or it starts to sound funny. As you see here, it's gone. But basically, that was volume attenuation. Now, this maximizer by iZotope Ozone will make it so that your track never goes beyond the 0 dB. But pretty much, this is how a maximizer works. The threshold sets the peak of your track. So if I set my threshold after normalizing, let's normalize this track first. Now, if I set, let's play the track. If I set my threshold to -5 dBs, what's going to happen is that every single signal and sound, every single part of the track that is beyond -5 dB will now peak to 0 dB, just like in our normalization. And anything below that will be boosted a lot. And that's pretty much what happens. So if I lower this to -10, it means that every single moment in the track that is reaching -10 dB, which is a very low peak, will be boosted to reach 0 dB. That's how the wave file beefens up, and that's why it becomes loud as hell, because everything is now reaching 0 dB, and the things below -10 are getting boosted quite a lot. So basically, when you use the maximizers, the lower the threshold is, the more stuff will sound super loud. But you want to be careful, because if I set like anything beyond like -14 dBs to reach 0 dBs, then it becomes like it destroys the contrast between loud and quiet. That means that your percussion is gonna sound weird. You're gonna have less punch in your track. It's gonna sound more like a brick wall, like always 0 dB, always huge and everything. But when you do that, there's a bit of you lose a bit of that punch, because there's less difference between quiet and loud. And usually when you have a huge leap from quiet to loud, that's where you have punch in your track. So you want to reach a good amount, like a good threshold that you like, you know. This depends on the genre you write, depends on your arrangement, how many, like what the sounds you're using are. For example, in this arrangement, I'm using trailer hits, as you see here. This is the normalized version, and you see these peaks. On each peak here, there's a trailer hit, you know, usually. So in this case, they create a lot of punch. If I were to, you know, increase the limiting a lot, I will lose that punch a lot. You know, so that's not good. Now, there's another thing you notice is the ceiling. The ceiling, pretty much, I think it limits how loud your track can get. So I think I might be wrong on this, but yeah, set maximum output level. So if I set the ceiling to -2 dBs, it's gonna, like, my volume attenuation, which happens whenever anything goes well beyond 0 dB, will trigger at -2 dB. So the ceiling would make sure that your limiting doesn't go beyond a certain threshold, and it's good to have -0.3 or -0.5 ceiling, or -1 if your mix is too loud. But that pretty much leaves a bit of headroom so people's ears don't get attacked so harshly. But basically, low threshold means more loudness. This is the stupid way to put it. There's more to this. But again, once your track, you know, becomes too loud and it goes beyond 0 dB, then volume attenuation will be applied. And you see here in iZotope Ozone some curves that go down. That's your volume going down. Now, the volume attenuation in iZotope Ozone can happen, you know, more fast or more slow. Slow volume attenuation means something like this. Let me lower the volume here. You see, like, it goes back to the normal volume very slowly, while if I set the volume attenuation to super fast, it's like this, but it's you can hear it's destroyed in my mix because this threshold is too low. So a good thing is to set the threshold to, you know, something that is a good peak. In this case, I'd say -8. It's pretty good. And you see the volume attenuation only triggers when I have big hits. So you have to find a good, you know, a good ratio. And that's pretty much how you do it. So you put a maximizer on your master track in your mixer, and then you do the threshold. You can also use presets. In this case, if I change to IRCs, whatever, it changes the algorithm a little bit. And the stereo and link and all those things we're going to talk about in other tutorials. But yeah, that's how you use a maximizer, basically. There's way more knowledge into this that I explained today that I even don't know myself for now. I'm going to explain it in other tutorials, but I just wanted this one to be very fast. So guys, try to use maximizers, but only if your arrangement without maximizers sounds huge in terms of frequency spectrum and balanced. Because pretty much what we did here, maximizing the track, is emphasizing what is there. So if your track sounds like crap, if your mix is terrible without maximization, once you apply the maximizer, it's going to be twice as terrible because it's going to be way more evident. So always the basic idea is to write good arrangements, sound balanced, that have a broad frequency spectrum. And I talked about this in my orchestrating a chord tutorial or in many other of my tutorials. But once you get the good sound in your basic song, then you can maximize, and that gives you a boost in loudness. And then there's all the other mastering like compression, exciting, and equalizing, and all those things, which I'm going to talk about in other tutorials, surely. But for now, that is all in terms of loudness. And I hope it was helpful for you. Before you sign off, subscribe to this channel and check out other videos from my channel if you want to learn how to compose orchestral music. And if you want to learn how to compose trailer music, check out the Trailer Music Academy courses and the Evenon courses as well if you want. Link down below in the description. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.